Professor Wiseguy here, coming at you with a topic that strikes dread into the hearts of students everywhere. You guessed it, we're talking documentation. Dread? It's like driving 95 miles an hour in a school zone while blindfolded. That's dread. Documentation is that picky, rule-laden stuff that you have to insert into research writing. Depending on the system you're following, the documentation might involve parenthetical citations, where you tell where the information came from in the text using details in parentheses, or it could be composed of footnotes or endnotes, which do the same thing at the bottom of the page or the end of the paper. No matter what system, what rule book you're following, I think we can agree that documentation is sort of a pain. Still, it's a necessary pain. To understand documentation, we really need to answer three questions. Why do we do it? When do we do it? How do we do it? Now, for this video, let's start with the why question. Why do we use documentation? A lot of people look at this process and imagine that it was concocted by teachers in order to torture students. In reality, the torture is merely a side benefit. Documentation is important on its own. When I ask people why we have to do documentation, they'll frequently answer with this: to avoid plagiarism. Yes, when you properly document your work, one result is that you do avoid plagiarism. But that's not really why you do it. Tell me, would you drive 95 miles an hour and blindfolded through a school zone? Hopefully your answer is no. And why wouldn't you do that? To avoid reckless driving. Well, that's not really your reason, is it? It is a reason, but it's not hopefully your primary motivation. You don't drive 95 miles an hour blindfolded through a school zone because you don't want to squash little kids. You don't want to wreck your car. You don't want to lose your license. You don't want to hurt yourself. So yes, you do avoid plagiarism when you do proper documentation. But that shouldn't be your answer to why you do it. We're going to have to keep looking. Did you know, by the way, that 37% of grade school kids have driven through school zones while blindfolded? Shocking, isn't it? Grade school kids are too young to drive blindfolded or not, but here we learn that over a third of them are behaving in a very unsafe manner. What? You doubt me? You think I just plucked this wonderful statistic out of the air? That's ridiculous. Do you want to know where I got my information? Well, fine. I heard it. You know, they say that it's true. Not good enough? This gets us to our first answer to why we do documentation. We do it to allow a reader to verify our information. You don't necessarily believe me. I don't necessarily believe you. But if we do proper documentation, something better than "I've heard," then we can check it out for ourselves. Documentation allows the reader to verify information. Is that enough? Well, it actually is, but there's more. You want me to tell you how I know that 37% of grade school kids have driven through school zones while blindfolded? Okay, I can do that. I'm going to tell my source. It's a guy named Richard. He's in a memory care unit because of his dementia. Now you have a problem with my source. What if my source were the Indiana State Highway Safety Association? Would that be better than Richard? Probably. That source would actually give some authority and credibility to my hard-to-believe claim about blindfolded school kids. Documentation provides authority and credibility for our reader. They'll tend to believe you more, which is almost always a good thing. Enough? Sure, but I have another one. Let's say that my reader is totally fascinated by the fact that 37% of grade school kids have driven through school zones while blindfolded. Who wouldn't be, right? Well, this dazzled reader might reasonably suspect that in my source from that Indiana Highway Safety Association, there might be other really cool information. For example, they might share that 72% of school kids can't see over the dashboard, or that blindfolded third graders drive better than blindfolded fourth graders. And that documentation that I use to point to the source of the first piece of information, it allows a reader to discover those other interesting facts. Smart researchers know that by following the leads given in a footnote or a parenthetical source, they're likely to find more and maybe better material. So documentation also allows a reader to do further research. How much would you pay for all of this? Don't answer yet because there's more. Do you know Agnes Quackenbush? You probably don't because, well, Agnes is a person who doesn't cut a high profile. She's a researcher for the Indiana State Highway Safety Association. Her days are spent compiling statistics in a cramped, windowless office on the outskirts of Terre Haute. She fills her evenings by working jigsaw puzzles with her 4 cats. Agnes's life is a little dull, but it was Agnes who discovered and then published that finding about the 37% of blindfolded grade school drivers. She did that. Did her supervisor notice? Did Agnes receive so much as a "way to go"? No. But by documenting that information, you can help bring a little sunshine into Agnes's life. Documentation gives credit to the person responsible for the information. Now, you may think that's silly or trivial, but let me share something. Several years back, I was doing a book review. It was on this book. As I was reading, I thought, this stuff reminds me of that journal article I published a while back. And then at the top of the next page, I read this. Mark Browning shows how writing teachers implicitly signal that blah, blah, blah. Hey, that's my name. Did I get paid for that reference to my article? No. Did I even get paid for the original article? Not a penny. But it was cool to see that somebody was using my work and had the courtesy to give me credit. Documentation gives credit where credit is due. So there it is. We have 4 good reasons why we should do documentation. Documentation allows the reader to verify information. Documentation provides authority and credibility for our reader. Documentation allows a reader to do further research. And documentation gives credit where credit is due. And then there's that small matter about being required to do it by a teacher or an editor or whoever is making the rules. I understand that this last is the real reason that we do documentation. We have to. But the reason that those teachers and editors and such require it is for those 4 reasons I just shared. Are there other reasons you could add to my list? Well, I'd be pleased to hear your ideas in the comments. And watch for the soon-to-appear second part of this video when we consider documentation. When do we do it? That's in the future, but in the present, be sure to watch out for blindfolded grade schoolers in SUVs. They're everywhere. Okay, get out of here.